Hello, welcome to Paranormal Extraction. I'm Zoe Starr, and our show is going to be so great today. Something totally different, someone totally new. Today we have Jordan Stark, director of the Spirit Rescue Center of Psychic Studies. She is amazing. Okay, let me just explain a little bit about her. All right, she's a reverend, a demonologist, a medium, a healer, entity remover, counselor. I mean, oh my God, more. I'm not kidding. So today in this interview, we'll be speaking on the corruption of the human soul, darkness spreading. Yeah, it's a pretty serious topic, and I love it, and I love her. Jordan will be discussing her unique experiences of being a demonologist and the battle we all face between dark and light. Are you ready? Jordan, oh my God, it's so great to have you on my show today. I just want to thank you so much, and you've got like some really new stuff, which I love. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and our topic today?
Of course. First and foremost, though, I just want to thank you for allowing me to come on to your show and grace your audience.
You're so
Appreciate the
welcome.
effort and the work that you put into this because it's not easy. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for
Thank
all your
you.
hard work and dedication.
I appreciate that.
So my name is Jordan, and so I'm a demonologist, and I like to call myself a protector of souls, and that just means those who are within the physical body, but also those who are without. So I do a lot of work with rescue mediumship, attachment removal, house clearings, and also a healer. So doing a lot of wounding work that we may hold within our consciousness based on experiences that we've had within this lifetime. So, lots of trauma or situations where we felt like we didn't have a lot of power or control, but also wounding in our souls and from past lives that also come through within this lifetime, which we'll get into why that's really important later on in the show.
Yeah, okay. And so I know that you have this center. I know you do all this stuff on the side, okay? But then you also have this great center that people can go to online and take classes. Tell us a little bit about the Spirit Rescue Center of Psychic Studies.
Of course, thank you for asking. So, the Spirit Rescue Center of Psychic Studies is pretty much a one stop shop for individuals who want to develop or further explore their own psychic or mediumship abilities. So, we have a program that's pretty well encompassing. So, whether or not someone wants to just step into the psychic field, mediumship, or if they want to do more energy healing or clearing work, or if they want to do some more specialty programs within the Spirit Rescue program. A big part of the school was one, to make the classes affordable and accessible for folks, but also to help create a sense of community. Because as someone like myself who was a protector, when I was first coming into my skill set and my
Yeah.
development, when I was pushed away from spiritual communities because I
Yes.
connected were a bit more dense and dark and scary for folks. And so I didn't have a safe space really to develop my own skill set. And I've met people all over the world who do work that's not similar to my own. They're a bit more in the higher frequencies, but I find that there's a place for all of us. And so we really wanted to create a space that's safe for everyone to come and learn for themselves, but also from each other, and to create a sense of more belonging and community within the spiritual community, more or less.
Well, I think that that is so important because, I mean, we have talked before and there is nowhere to go, really. Like, why is this happening? Or you get frauds. So, speaking with you, I know that this is the real thing, the real path for people to understand. I was just wondering, like, if you were saying like healing your soul, is that part of the um, classes, or is that or trauma, or is that you do that on the side?
So a bit of both, actually. So through the Spirit Rescue Center, we do have classes that naturally ingrained throughout the program is healing, especially for those who are in protection work, because it is so important for really anyone, but especially those who are
Well,
connected frequencies to start to heal their stuff, because those are the wounding that not so nice things will go after. So we wanted to make sure that it was embedded in the program no matter what level you were at. as well as something that I do on the side as well, whether it be through my work as a counselor, but also as a spiritual counselor as well. I also do a lot of that work in my own practice as well.
My God. Do you sleep?
Busy. Want to
Okay.
make sure that the time I have down here is worthwhile for myself, but the collective as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So I know that we're discussing the corruption of the human soul and darkness spreading. Let's go into that topic, Jordan. It's pretty heavy duty. I
oh,
mean,
absolutely. It definitely is. And it's something that I always have to give a little bit of a disclaimer before I start talking about these
sure.
things, just because, I do take this work very seriously, and there's a high level of responsibility that I like to hold with that. And what I find a lot of people don't recognize is that once something is in your awareness, your vibrational frequency actually shifts. And what that means is that you become more visible to energies that you may not have been visible to before. So I always like to let people know that, because if someone starts seeing some of these things after watching the program, I'm going to get to some protective strategies because I never want to leave people without that. But just so people kind of have a better understanding if they do happen to come across some of these energies as well.
Well, of course, that's going to happen. I mean, it's inevitable, you know. So, I mean, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you say that. You know, most people never do. So there goes, A plus, not just A for you, but A plus. Okay.
Thank you. So that's the teacher in me, the part of me that wants to help people learn and grow.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. What is going on about? Okay, I know you had, these experiences as a demonologist and a child, and horrific stuff. All by yourself, not knowing what in the hell was going on. So what? Let's talk about that aspect, and the corruption of the human soul and darkness spreading.
Of course. So, growing up, I wasn't really the type of medium that spoke with individual spirits. I wasn't really talking to grandma and grandpa who had passed on. Honestly, growing up, I had a lot of more psychic experiences. But I had this deep sense of knowing that God, angels, demonic entities, as well as other entities, including earthbound spirits, existed. And I remember at 5 years old, my third or fourth cousins, I was tiny, tiny little thing. And they brought me to this old decrepit barn. And they left me in there after they said, "Ooh, it's haunted with ghosts," and then they ran for the hills.
Oh,
And even at five,
wonderful.
yeah,
Oh my
right.
God.
And I remember at 5 years old very distinctly having this memory of me stepping into the space more and starting to feel out the energy and feeling the shifts and starting to talk to earthbound spirits. So those who had not transitioned to a higher frequency, depending on your, affiliation or your belief system, that can look like heaven, the other side, the light, whatever you want to call it. And I started talking to them as if, and really, I was starting to cry for them and knowing that they were trapped and some of them couldn't leave on, and I could feel some of the pain. And again, I'm only 5 years old. And, I always say my guides allowed me to have a sprinkle of activity here and there. I'd see ghost spirits every once in a while, would go to sleep feeling energies all around my bed, realizing how a lot of those were protectors. But it wasn't really until I was 15 where the activity really started to increase. And that was because I learned much later on in my life that when you're 15, your free will is now not being as held by your angels or your guides. So they give it back to you because to the spirit world, you are seen as an adult.
So
So
it
once
be between that age and that age, you learned that part what you just discussed. Does that make
yeah.
sense? Am I on the right path here?
So I pretty much, so once 15 hit, spirit activity kind of went crazy in my house. We had banging doors, people running up and down the stairs. I would walk into
Oh,
space
I see what you're
really
saying.
comfortable, where before that wasn't really a thing. Like it happened every once in a while, but now it was to the point that it was all the time. And I had energies coming in telling me to kill myself and all of these horrible things happening. And it was really interesting because I would also hear another voice come in and say, "Jordan, you have no idea how loved you are." You have no idea why you've been on this planet. You're meant to be here for a reason. You're going to help a lot of people. Don't give in to the darkness.
Oh my God. So he had both.
Oh yes, and it was interesting because I would actually hear them fighting one another sometimes. Where I would hear this entity or energy come in telling me, "You're not supposed to be here. No one loves you. No one cares about you." And then this other energy would come in and say, "She said no. You're not allowed to talk to her like that. You need to leave." And I would
Wow.
listen, arguing, and I remember as a child and as a 15-year-old going, "Okay, I can't tell anyone about this because they're going to think that I'm struggling with some sort of mental health." When I knew that this was very much true.
Exactly. Wow.
So it was,
You're very, very lucky because,
I'm very
a lot of people that, mainly all the people that I've had interviews with or talked to, none of them have had your experience. And they've been really screwed up by it. Okay. Or just, or they commit suicide, like you said. So,
isolating, alienating. You don't have a lot of power or control. There's things happening that you can't even see with your human eye, and you're just trying to do the best you can with what you can when you're new and you don't have the information. It's a challenge for anyone to go through it.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, so at 15, you're getting both these messages. You're getting bad and good. So, what did you do about it? I mean, you had nowhere to go. You couldn't tell anyone, So, how did you develop more into, because some things really happen, bad things. Talk about some of those things that you were going through, and how did you transition to the side of the light to understand it?
Oh, absolutely. There was many times where I definitely was influenced, was contemplating harming myself in some pretty intense ways. And I'm very grateful for my guides. I'm grateful for my higher self. I'm grateful for my angel because oftentimes they would step in and they each have their own different role to play. Um, where my angel would come in and bring that very loving and supportive energy around me that would just make me feel at peace. My guides would give
Wow.
me a little bit of structure, and my higher self would always come in and kind of kick my butt a little bit and to get into gear. But one thing that I'm really grateful for is that I always had this intense knowing ever since I was really young that, there was a battle between dark and light, and that you needed to stay in the light, and that every soul on this planet, no matter who you are, is incredibly important. You have a right to be here, and that nothing can take that right away from you unless you allow it. And so, thankfully, though, things kind of settled down a little bit until I'd say about 2018 to 2020 ish. Things kind of, as the world was changing, so was I.
Yeah, but didn't you get
And
thrown down the stairs too?
that was it in 2020,
Okay,
unfortunately.
okay, so here we go. Sorry. I'm going a little far ahead, okay?
It's okay. That's okay. It was a pretty intense experience. So pretty much within those very short amount of time, my guides very clearly came in and said, "Look, you're a medium, and you're going to be helping souls who have been stuck here and have been trapped, and here's how you're going to do it." And they were kind of coaching me through it, and all these experiences, they were truth. You could feel the truth in it. I could feel the energy of the spirit transitioning and the love that they were receiving. So even though I didn't have anyone in the physical supporting me through it, I trusted my relationship with my guides and spirit.
Wow, wow.
So I always had this, and again, I'm fairly new at this point,
I've
and
never heard of this before. This is, I mean, wonderful.
yeah,
That,
it was nice until I kept hearing something coming in and telling me that I needed to work with demons. And I say my
well,
guides must have been at this for a long time because I've always said I'll do anything I need to do for the light, for the higher consciousness, for God, source, creator of light and love, whatever you want to call it, but no demons. And they kept coming in and saying, "You need to work with demons, you need to work with demons." And every time I would push it away because I just figured you're probably a demonic entity trying to mess with me and I don't want anything to do with you.
exactly. Right.
Oh yeah, and I kept pushing it away. And then I like to say that my team definitely had a very big sit down with me, an intervention of sorts.
Wow.
And I didn't know about contracts at this point, and they said, "You made an agreement with God to do this work. This is your job. You can't deny it." And I went, "You're probably a demon." I kept dismissing it. And I had this such a strong experience where I knew I spoke to God. I was almost as if I was plucked out of this my body,
Mm-hmm.
brought to this plate of this beautiful white gold. And very distinctly and clearly, I hear, Jordan, you made a promise to do this for me. I need you to do this. I wasn't a full believer in God. I don't affiliate with any one particular religion, but that made me a believer. I came out of the meditation. It was so strong, that experience. I turned to my sister at the time and I said, did you experience that? Because I felt like I was literally, my body was plucked and put somewhere else.
Wow.
I literally spoke to God. And at that point, there was such a sense of knowing. I said, okay, I guess this is my job. And then within 3 days, I was getting attacked by a demonic entity, a human demonic entity as well, a soul that had transitioned as well, which is one thing I really want to talk about today. And during that experience, me and my entire family were under influence. We had mocking happening. My wounds were getting triggered. I literally was levitated and thrown down the stairs.
Yeah.
Things were shifting and moving throughout our houses. Direct clothing and was being dragged across the floor. Furniture was being dragged across the floor. Things were flying off of
Right.
walls.
So
It was,
poltergeist as well.
oh yeah, it was a lot of activity all at once. And at
What
that point, my third
what
open, I
did
started
your
seeing them.
sorry for interrupting, but what did your family think at that point?
Um, some of my, I'm very grateful. A lot of my sister is also very intuitive, and so was my mother. My sister could see and experience things not at the same level as me, but pretty close. And I'm very lucky that my mother and my sister and my aunt, actually, who was there, were really supportive of me in that moment. I remember my aunt told me, she said, Jordan, I don't see what you see, but I trust in you and I believe in you and I know how grounded you are. I know you wouldn't
Wow.
make up something that's not true. I was very lucky. Now, I did have some family members who weren't a believer at that time. However, over time, and after they've seen what I've done and the people that I've worked with, they've now become a believer. So I'm very
Wow.
grateful, very lucky that I have a very supportive community around me, whether it be through family,
Yeah, that I
friendship,
this just
partner.
doesn't happen, Jordan. I mean, you know what I mean? Not I mean, you're the first person I've talked to that's had this type of positive negative experience, you know. So yeah, I mean, keep going, girl. I It's just amazing to me.
But I mostly meet people that don't have that type of experience, either with their family, their loved ones, their relationships, whatever it may be. And that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to make the center. And even in my own practice, it's about creating that sense of community and belonging, because this is tough stuff and it's not always easy, especially when there's things happening that you don't have a lot of explanation for. And it's nice, even just in your development, to be able to bounce things off of people and say, oh, you saw that too? Great. I saw that too. It's really
Yeah.
validating, help you
Yes.
believe it, which is a big part of this work.
Well, a
So I'm
lot of the
very,
times then you think you're going crazy.
oh, yeah.
And then
Oh,
people
yes.
steer themselves into psychiatry and drugs and suppress
Mhm.
all of the things that these that because they don't know what else to do. You know, I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
you know what I mean? That's
Oh, yeah.
sad. That's so sad.
I've met so many people that have taken that route, and I have nothing but empathy and compassion for them. I am very grateful that my experience didn't go that way, but it is the reality of so many experiences. And so I always like to tell people, if you are going through that, try to connect with a local medium or rescue circle or something to help you not feel crazy. Because even me, at my development at this point, there's still moments where I'm like, it's crazy. That didn't happen, did it? And then spirit comes in immediately and gives me some information. And I'm like, oh, okay, which I'm grateful for. But I also asked my team to do that too, because the reality is your team is there to help you, but unless you ask, it's hard for them to deliver because you have free will. So I always tell people, ask your team what you need for confirmation to know that you're not losing it.
Well, yeah,
Because
but there is no teams. I'm telling you, I've been doing this a long time. There is nowhere to go. You know,
I'm talking
where
about your spirit team, so your guides, your mentors, that team,
oh.
the team you're working with in spirit, you let them know what you need because they will give it to you if you ask. You gotta ask them.
Okay, so how are you going to contact this? I mean, you talked about the human soul darkness spreading. That has all to do with that side of it and not having your team. So,
Well, that has their team, but a lot of people haven't accessed their team or they don't recognize that they do. The corruption of the human soul honestly has a lot to do with the earthbound spirits because I find I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When I've often worked with clients or paranormal teams, anytime something energetically more dense or feels a little bit more negative or scary, people automatically assume it's a demonic entity. And to be quite honest with you, 99.9% of the time, it's usually not. I find that people that do come in contact with these entities somehow have a contract with it. So whether they're
wow.
helping, they're
Wow.
giving information, they're sharing information, because people like me who are doing this work, without people like you, for example, so who's giving people a platform to talk about these things, I never would have known. Right. So you
Right.
would have a contract to a degree to help be able to spread information so things would be in your awareness. Because otherwise it sounds crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy, Jordan. Um, so moving on here, I mean, you're blowing my mind. So, um, we're talking about both, and you need that team. So, what if you are somebody that can't figure out their team or what? Or, I mean, what do you do? Do you help? I know it sounds like you help assist them to figure out what their team is through different modalities that are you're going to be doing in your spirit center, for them to understand what and how to get to that level. Um, I'm not really sure what to say at this point because I'm kind of blown away. You know, it's I've known people that have searched for years and years and years and with no answer, no matter what they do, no matter what program they go to. Um, what do you have to say about that? You know?
Important for people to recognize that every person on this planet has a team and spirit working with them, and to, again, free will. Your team can't do something for you unless you ask. And so I was grateful where I had the sense of knowing of, okay, I know there's someone helping me. I didn't know who at the time. They said, bring me to the right people who can help give me your message correctly and accurately. And I naturally got guided to certain folks who could translate the message for me. And the messages that I got 5, 6 years ago about now are happening now. So they were very accurate, very on point with everything that they were saying. But you just got to ask your team and spirit to help lead you to someone who can translate the message. Or again, you can find development circles, spiritual groups, schools, that kind of thing to help you if you are interested in accessing your own team directly. Meditation is a great tool for everyone to really utilize if they are interested in connecting with their spirit team and their guides.
Right.
Um, but it's really important, especially for those who are doing protective work like myself, because, as I was saying, as human consciousness has shifted and we have elevated within the spirit world, which means we have shifted to a point where energies that we've never been exposed to, entities that we've never been exposed to, are now within our frequency. As if you
Yeah,
go to
why
a certain,
is that? I mean, it seems to be, and I'm getting this from just regular Joes going, something isn't right. Something isn't right. And then we have the Christians or whatever saying that, it's the prophecies are happening, Jesus is coming, you know what I mean? Armageddon, all this shit. I, I mean, so do you think something was unleashed, or why is the veil so thin now?
I think we're becoming, collectively, we are growing, we are evolving, we are changing. Historically, there's so many accounts of how the world is ending. And we're still here in the physical, but spiritually, that world that we were in we have ended that world. We went into a new frequency, which means that there's new energies. We vibrate at a different level, but there are entities and beings that were already in that frequency we've now stepped into.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to see them, they see us, we're exposed to them, they're exposed more to us, which is a big part about rescue mediumship. Rescue mediumship really wasn't a thing 50 years ago. experiencing earthbound spirits. That's really grown within the past 50 years because our vibration has shifted higher, which is good. We want to go to a higher consciousness.
Sure.
But you know, we are in the lowest denser vibration because we're in a physical body. We will always be the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are at a higher frequency than us, they don't need a physical body to exist. But as our consciousness shifts, we naturally start to become exposed to these energies.
Right.
So as this newer shifts keeps happening, demonic entities' frequencies continue to stay lower. But as we go also higher, the things that were in our frequency before to go lower, because now the shift between us is different, which is where you see a lot of the corruption of the human spirit happening, particularly with the earthbounds. And that's the big part of why I wanted to come on the show, because as I was saying, you know, a lot of people, when I'm working with them, they say, oh, it's an entity, it's a demonic entity. And me being a rescue medium whose frequency goes low enough to see these energies, when I step into it, oftentimes it's not an entity. Oftentimes it's a wounded child, someone who was murdered. Their energy is not going to feel nice. Right. And so really wanted to really talk about the earthbound spirit because we're seeing more and more and more of them, and their frequency can feel really daunting. It can be really scary depending on the spirit itself. And so my mentor and personal friend, Amy Major, she wrote a collection of books on this. And she was the one who actually taught me a lot of this information, as well as my own experiences with spirit. Now, what was really cool, though, was before I even met her, my guides already taught me pretty much everything that she ended up kind of expanding on, which was really great validation for me that I wasn't
The validation. Right. Right.
Oh, yes. So important in this work. And so she kind of put things into categories for earthbound spirits. And again, earthbound spirits just being spirits who hadn't made the transition. So she put a category of level 1, which is a spirit who, through their own free will, chose to not transition. So oftentimes when I meet spirits like this, it's someone who, you know, was a grandparent and they wanted to see their kids and their grandkids grow up. Someone who didn't go to Disney World. You'd be surprised how many of them really wanted to go to Disney World and never got to. Or who wanted to say their final goodbyes to a family member or a friend, a loved one that they, you know, hadn't seen in multiple years, and they wanted to wait until their loved one passed on, so that way they could go together. So I see those ones a lot.
Wow.
Ones whose, you know, the dying process wasn't what they were expecting based on their own religious or spiritual beliefs. A lot of atheists end up in this vibration.
Yes. I know.
And so they kind of get stuck here.
Or people that have committed suicide.
I would put those in level 2.
Oh,
so level 2 are,
yeah. What is level 2 then?
Yeah, so they're usually earthbound spirits who we would consider to be the victim in some capacities. They have a lot of trauma with them, so they need a lot more of emotional support in their transition. So, you know, this is where I usually see spirits who are sitting when they have committed suicide, and they're very much surrounded by their pain. So their frequency is a little bit lower. And we in a physical being, more energetically sensitive, when you get to a lower frequency, it feels a little bit more daunting. It feels a little bit more scary. Something doesn't feel right. It's scary.
Yes.
A lot of and then lower than that would be the level 3s. And they tend to be what we would consider to be the perpetrators of violence, so those who have enacted harm. So I see a lot of murderers, abusers, serial killers, that they're kind of sitting in that vibe. Sexual offenders, domestic violence folks. Also important to remember, though, that a lot of these folks also were victims within their lifetime as well. And this, you know, they develop some unhealthy coping strategies. Not to excuse bad behavior, just because you were abused yourself doesn't give you the right to abuse someone else.
Sure.
And at the same time, they sit at a lower frequency. And oftentimes these ones didn't want to transition because they thought they were going to be judged. They thought they were not going to be accepted. So they've chosen to stay at a lower frequency and oftentimes continue to enact harm, because it's almost this idea of, well, I'm here anyway. I can't go to heaven or the other side because, you know, I'm not going to be accepted. So I'll just stay here and continue to wreak havoc.
Yeah, this is where like throw you down the stairs.
Yeah, they were not the ones that threw me down the stairs. Thankfully, that's a lot. Usually you'll see them touch you. They might scratch you a little bit.
Yeah, so those are the ones. Yeah.
I've had level ones do that too because I knew I could help them, but I wasn't aware at the time. And so they were trying to get my attention over and over and over again, but I wasn't opening up. I wasn't listening to them. So they, got a little bit aggressive because I wasn't listening. Once I started listening to them, they backed off quite a bit. They weren't meaning to cause harm. The level threes, they usually are the ones that are intentionally trying to cause harm. And I find that the level twos and threes are the ones that demonic entities tend to go after the most. And this is where the corruption of the human soul happens. So you've got these demonic entities, and we like to call them fleas. Like they're little tiny demonic entities. They're not really powerful, but what they do is they scout out people, whether they be in the living or an earthbound form, and they attach to them. And their main role is to bring down your frequency so that a much more nastier entity, much more stronger demonic entity, can come in and influence. And so these demonic entities, they are oftentimes the ones that who we call level 4 or a manifested, once human manifested entity. And so what happens is that these fleas or these smaller demonic entities jump onto the earthbound spirit and they surround them in this darkness, right? They'll tell them, no one loves you. God has rejected you. You don't have a right to exist here. No one's going to be able to help you. Everything that, you think badly of yourself is true, correct. And so what ends up happening to the earthbound, again, if it's a level 2, they already have a lot of trauma in their life. They already have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of shame towards themselves. And so with the level 3s, the demonic entity kind of feeds on that and builds on it. And slowly over time, the earthbound spirit starts to reject their own divinity. They start to reject their own inner light. And what ends up happening is they end up manifesting. They end up transforming into something that's less human than human. And so oftentimes people see them as humanoid because they like to look like how they did when they were human, but something just isn't right. They have like this dark undertone to them.
Is this the person itself, a person changing their appearance, or is it the ghost or the apparition or the earthbound spirit that is changing? What's
So it
going
would be
on
the
here?
earthbound spirit that shifts. And so I always like to let people know this because the reality is that any single one of us could become earthbound for 1,000,001 reasons. And also to let people know who are in the spiritualist community to say, hey, if you come across one of these things, it's helpful to know what it is because they behave and act very differently than a demonic entity. So I'm going to get into that, but it's important for people to know what they kind of look like and how they appear. All right, so they usually, because they were once human, they like to keep on that human form, but again, over time, they become corrupted. They start to lose their humanity, the part of them that makes them who they truly are.
Wow.
Which is scary because, as I said, it can happen realistically to any single one of us.
So this is very similar to like IOP, infestation, oppression, and full-on possession.
Yep.
So what stage is this at? We're looking at oppression?
Yeah, so we'd be looking at the oppression stage, and it was actually, I was just actually thinking that it's very similar to how a demonic entity would try to infiltrate a human body.
Okay.
Very simple.
Wow. That's pretty scary.
It is. It is.
So
And
we got the level 4s, right? Is it the last one, level 4?
yeah.
What is level 4? Is that full on possession?
So because it's a human spirit, the demonic entity doesn't necessarily fully infiltrate the soul of the spirit. It infiltrates the awareness. And so, as I said, the demonic entity will influence the spirit to reject God, to reject their own inner light. And once the spirit has done that, they become surrounded in dark consciousness. And so they slowly start to shift and form into something much more sinister than a typical earthbound. A level 3 is going to be nasty, but they still have awareness of who they are. They still have awareness of their life. They still have the awareness of, right versus wrong. What are the societal rules? Like, they still carry their own consciousness of who they are. The level fours are the ones, human demonic entities, they lose all of that over time. And so what ends up happening is they actually work with demonic entities oftentimes because we would consider them to be in a hostage situation where oftentimes, again, they have that demonic attachment. So that flea that's keeping their vibration low
Mm-hmm.
to, keep them in a state of almost servitude to a demonic entity. And then usually you'll have a much larger entity circling them. Because what they end up doing is they allow this once human demonic entity to almost act as a lure for other earthbound spirits. And what they do, once they kind of get them in their grasp and they make through the full transformation, once human demonic entities actually work with true demonic entities. They work a little bit different, and I'll get to that to a second. I just want to go back a little bit to go over what they look like, because a lot of times people see them as shadow forms or cloaked figures. Oftentimes that's usually when they're trying to hide. A lot of times people will talk about these white-faced things. So white faces with big black eyes, big open black mouths, is usually also how they can appear. Dark blobs. They tend to try to stay in more of a human form because that's what they had existed from. But if they choose to do so, because they shift into that, I was human to I'm more entity than anything, they can now also shapeshift. So the first one that I actually came
Wow.
across, that I was aware of, I saw it from a distance. And I remember looking at it going, something ain't right with you. This is really uncomfortable. Like, I feel not safe. Like, I feel like there's a sinisterness here. There's a malicious
Sure.
intent. It was keeping its distance. And then slowly it turned towards me. And then within a second, it was in my face. And it looked to me almost like the Wicked Witch from Snow White, but not quite. Very gray, a little bit decrepit. And the moment I said, I know you're not human and you need to leave, it started to shapeshift and tried to scare me with its form. Right? So they oftentimes will try to manipulate you based on just pure fear tactics. Because they were once human, they understand how to manipulate people a little bit better than true demonic entities. I find when I come across them, with true demonic entities, because they were created outside of time and space, they can wait forever. They will be patient. They will watch you for years. They will find the right moment before they decide
I've had
to do
my
it.
experiences. I know exactly what you're trying to say. Even though you're spiritually doing your stuff, they will wiggle in.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And a true demonic entity is patient. They will wait
Yes, they
decades
will.
to, try to influence. A once human demonic entity, they were created again from a human spirit. We are impatient. We do not want to wait. We want things instantly, as quick as possible. And so they operate the same way. So within a day or within maybe a week at most, they will start the attack. And they're aggressive. Where a true demonic entity can see through you because they can travel through all your energetic bodies, whether it be your physical, mental, emotional, karmic, or spiritual. They can see all your wounds, all your traumas. They can also see your soul wounds, and they will project that out to you to try to harm you or manipulate you. But once human demonic entity doesn't have that ability. So I find when I come across one of them, they'll start picking and poking at things, trying to, poking at my wounding based on what I've talked about since they've been around. So it's a lot more recent where a true demonic entity will pull up things from your childhood that you thought you healed from, the things that you forgot even happened, and they'll bring that to your awareness. The ones human ones, they tend to pick up more things that are more recent. And the once human demonic entities, because they were once human, they know how to manipulate you a little bit different than a true demonic entity. When I've come in contact with a true demonic entity, their vibrational frequency is very, I don't want to call it egotistical, but it's very, I'm up here and you're down here. Like, you're the dirt beneath my fingertips. Like, who do you think you are? Like, very powerful. Very, I'm the king of the world and you're peasants.
Yeah.
Very kind of vibe.
Sure.
Where when I come across these once human ones, they just come at you with, I hate you. I don't
Mm.
like you. I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to ruin your life.
Wow.
Um, very sporadic. Almost like to think of almost like the energy of the Tasmanian Devil from Looney Tunes. If whoever remembers that,
Yeah.
very sporadic for the place and but aggressive at the same time. Um, where demonic entities, they really influence you on every level of your life, whether it be your home, your family, the people around you, your workplace, anything in your life, they really go after. The once human ones tend to go after you more mentally, more of a mental mindset because
Uh-huh.
they get what it's like to be human, and so they know how to better manipulate that. But again, they're much more aggressive, which can be challenging because at least with a true demonic entity, because they were created under the spirit law, they understand free will. So you can tell them, I don't accept this, I don't allow this, you need to leave, this is against my free will, I did not invite you into my space. And if you are in your position of power and you're not scared and you're connected with your own divinity, a true demonic entity, when I've done that, they've left. When I've had my clients do it and they've been in that state of empowerment because they recognize their own divinity,
Mm-hmm.
they've worked on the fact that they recognize that we are all of God and that they have a right to say why what I accept and what I don't accept. A
Sure.
true demonic recognizes that because they were created under that law. So they'll leave and they'll go find another victim. These ones, because they were not created under the law of free will, because they hadn't made that transition yet to recognize spirit law, they don't care. They'll keep coming after you and coming after you. So when my gifts first opened up, I got attacked by a true demonic entity. I felt it trying to rip the light out of my heart. I remember calling in for support. I felt like I had to hold on to my inner light because I knew if I didn't hold on to it, then I was going to die. Once I was very clear that this is not what I allowed and accepted, I saw it being escorted out by an angel.
Mm-hmm.
However, the one stayed, and the one continued to harass me, my family, for about 6 months. It would turn off my car. It absolutely threw me down the stairs. It
Right.
did all these things. No matter how many times I tried to say, no, I don't accept this, it didn't listen. It continued to pursue me. And it wasn't until I learned from my team to contact spiritual warriors. So those who are on the other side, who are stationed to help protect those who are dealing with something who is what is not human. When I was able to call them and when my guides pinged me on that, that's when things kind of started to settle down because it was through my free will that I didn't want this. And me being in a physical body and us being in the physical world, we take precedence over the spirit world. We get to decide what happens to us or what doesn't happen to us. But until then, it didn't care about my free will. It continued to come at you, which is pretty scary because there's people out there that are, trying to fight something, and then, I would do whatever I could do. I was using the Bible verses, and it didn't care. It just
Yeah.
laughed in my face, throwing things.
Mm-hmm.
The things that would work on a true demonic entity do not work on these entities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wanted to share that with people because I'm noticing more and more people are coming across these entities, and paranormal teams are coming across these entities, and they don't know what to do with them. They wreak a lot of havoc.
So, okay, so we only have like 2 more minutes, but so you would call in your spiritual warriors on this type of, if you recognize that's what it is. You would say, okay, I don't want this anymore. I have free will. And I call in my spiritual warriors or my angels or whatever you believe in. Okay. I like the spiritual warrior thing for you. I use that. And those will release this or get rid
Yeah,
of it.
so I tell people there's like 4 steps that pretty much cover yourself protection wise. First thing is recognizing your free will. So again, so you saying, I don't want this, I didn't invite this, I don't accept it, I don't allow it, because we live under the law of free will. That was a gift that God had given us. Once something breaks your free will, it can't happen. But first, you gotta, step into your free will
Mm-hmm.
and know that that is to be true. If there's a part of you that is worried or scared or concerned that it might not work, then you're not in your full power. And that's where it can kind of get a little bit dicey.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I always tell people is you need to heal your wounding. Whatever traumas that you carry with you, you've got to work on them and you've got to heal them. Because if you have nothing for them to pull on, nothing for them to poke, it puts you in a higher position of power.
Okay.
Because that's what they do. They poke at your wounding to make you feel scared, to make you feel vulnerable, to make
Right.
you feel out of control. So if you heal the wounding, there's nothing to poke at.
Right.
Third, I always tell people you need to remember your divinity. Remember that we are all of God, and when we can sit into that power, nothing can harm or touch us unless we allow it. They physically, spiritually cannot do anything to you if you're sitting in that position. Now, also recognizing many of us are wounded. I haven't met one person on this planet yet that isn't.
Right. Right.
If you're unsure of who to call, I always say there's 3 things you can do. You can call in spiritual police because if it is an earthbound trying to wreak havoc, spirit police will take care of it. They will remove the spirit for you based on if you ask them to. You can say, I don't want the spirit here. It's causing some havoc. It's overriding my free will. I need it to go.
Yeah, I like that term you use because it's so easy to see,
Get out. And I've seen it happen over and time again. If a spirit's not listening to me, I'll call in spirit police and I'll see an officer come.
I love that term.
They don't deal with things that are not human now. So if it's an ET, if it's a multidimensional, if it's a demonic entity, if it's one of these manifested, once human ones, spiritual warriors will come in and they can deal with it. Because they are people who have transitioned to a higher frequency on the other side, who are doing this work oftentimes in the physical, or who took lots of classes on the other side to do this work to help us.
Right.
So if you're sure, you can always call them in too. And if you're really not too sure of the right person to call, then you just say whoever would be most appropriate to provide support in this moment to help me enforce my free will.
Sure.
So it kind of covers all aspects. I usually call in all 3, depending on what I'm facing. That's what I always tell people, at least when they're first starting. If you're not too sure, just cover all 3. You've covered your bases.
Awesome. Awesome. I love this stuff, and we could go on and on and on and on, but that's like the beginning of having you on here again, obviously.
Things. I've gotten to the hybrids, the reptilians,
no, because that is the beginning, and it makes sense, and it's not, you're not just telling a story, you're telling us what to try. You're giving us options, and they're different, okay, than anyone I've ever spoken to, okay, and that's why I loved you so much, because you were offering help, and easy ways that to do it, to try,
Yeah.
And then of course, if a person needs more help, then they can contact you. And how can they contact you? Let's finish off with that.
Of course. So people can contact me directly at my website at www.start, S-T-A-R-T, sistersoflight.com. We also have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, and then also at the Spirit Rescue Center for Psychic Studies. Our school is launching in the spring of 2024, so we're super excited for that and to help give more tools like this to people.
Sure.
Because as you said, a lot of times people talk about things, but at the end of the day, as a person who is also looking for information, I want to know what do I do about it once I find out about some of these things or I encounter some of these things effectively, but also safely. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I just want to say thank you for like an intro. I feel like this is just an intro, but I really feel like it's going to help a lot of people. And yeah, I do. And so I just want to say I'm really grateful for you to come on the show today and give us some good information and, to begin that journey of recognizing this stuff and what the hell to do about it. I mean, I didn't know anything about the spiritual police or anything like that, but when you said that, I went, oh my God, I love that. It just was so easy for me to visualize, so and you make everything so it's hard to understand but if you have to really listen to you to understand, and it is not an easy way out, and everyone wants easy. And this is stuff is not easy. Okay? As you know. But
not easy.
yeah, so everybody out there, you've got to check out Jordan, right? And what was that again? Where can they get you again? www Spirit Rescue Center.
So we've got our spiritrescuecenter.com, and we've also got startsistersoflight.com.
Okay,
so
great.
If you want to take classes, we've got the center, and then if you want to talk to me personally or look at any of our services, then it would be Start Sisters of Light.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, you guys, there's a lot of information there. It's like kind of mind blowing. You're going to have to take a good day and just kind of absorb what we just spoke about, because it was really a lot, and it can be really heavy duty and overwhelming. But in the long term, it works. And so I just want to say thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again. And we are going to sign out. Thank you for watching. Bye, Jordan.
Bye. Thanks so much, though.